Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to this in our series of CILT UK webinars discussing the practical aspects of the UK's withdrawal from the EU. In November last year, we discussed the known knowns relating to the changes necessary in customs formalities and what at that time were known unknowns, primarily relating to market access. Last month, we discussed the issues and requirements for those transacting business between the UK and mainland Europe. And today we are focusing on the specific and unique issues relating to Northern Ireland. The need to maintain the Good Friday Agreement and unfettered movement between Northern Ireland and the Republic have led to the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol, creating an Irish Sea border, a de facto customs border down the Irish Sea. This has created issues for the movement of goods between mainland UK and Northern Ireland, with further changes planned that will impact movements on the reverse flows. Vaccine politics, the recent stance of paramilitaries, and the extension of the grace period have added to the complexity of the current problems. I started my career many years ago working for a tobacco company that had its origins in Belfast. And I recollect at that time that I was told that if someone told you they had the solution to the troubles in Ireland, they didn't understand the problems. And it is beginning to feel that we're in a similar and unique position, caught between the EU, the UK government, the Good Friday Agreement, and the need to maintain frictionless trade movement within the UK and with the Republic of Ireland. Today's webinar will discuss the current situation and issues, and is again brought to you through our Food and Retail Logistics Forum. And it brings together an excellent panel of speakers with Nick McCulloch, Managing Director, DFDS, Seamus Laney, Policy Manager, Northern Ireland from Logistics UK, together with Chris Sturman, Chair of the Food and Retail Logistics Forum. We were hoping to be joined by a representative from DARA, but unfortunately received notification last night that they were unable to join us today. But they have indicated that they will respond to specific questions raised during the webinar. I'm delighted you can join us. And Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. I think we've got an excellent process, the programme this afternoon for you. In this very vexed area, what we were looking to do is to try and clarify some of the existing issues, and also to get some views from the ground, from Seamus and from Nick, from their particular activities. Seamus particularly covering, representing Logistics UK, the trade association, which covers a wide range of businesses who are trying to keep going despite the disruptions that are currently being experienced. And of course, Nick, from the perspective of DFDS, particularly in terms of the ferries that run between the various ports on the mainland and across to Belfast and Larne. And to identify some of the operating activities which are now in place or currently being put in place to do inspections and making sure that the right paperwork is being applied to. Nick also has the benefit, of course, of being part of the larger organisation, which also runs a significant fleet of temperature-controlled vehicles and operates temperature-controlled facilities on both sides of the Irish Sea. So, without more ado, I think Kevin has given us the sort of the agenda for today. I'm going to first of all ask Seamus to pick up where we're at from a business perspective, from where he's seizing, and to cover the various political and operational issues that he is dealing with on behalf of members, many of whom, of course, we know because our members work for them. So, Seamus, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Christopher. What I'll do, I'm just going to share a presentation that I have here. So if you just bear with me. Okay, can everyone just see this presentation on screen? Can people see this on screen?
Yes, Seamus.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly I can, Seamus. We're looking good here.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, yes, thank you very much for the introduction, Christopher. I'm going to try and get through this. Obviously, it is very comprehensive. I've been given 10 minutes and I will give it my best shot here to go through. So, like my introduction said, I manage Northern Ireland here for Logistics UK. The protocol has been a massive change to how we move goods. Really, since the Brexit vote, we knew that there was going to be fundamental changes one way or another on how goods came and left Northern Ireland. But what I'm going to look at, a couple of the key areas here. So, what moving goods from GB to Northern Ireland since the 1st of January, really, what has been the causes of any problems? And what I would summarize using the 3 U's: the unaware, the unprepared, and the most probably worrying of all is the unwilling. So the problems that when we speak to industry, it was that a lot of consigners based in Great Britain were one of the U's predominantly, and that's where the problems were in the first few weeks, where the right data wasn't available at the right time. And we had this meant everything right from SMEs right up to large global blue chip companies. A lot of these businesses were not fully aware of what they had to do with regards to sending good produce to Northern Ireland. And in conversations with government, we've outlined this, and obviously there needs to be an education program, really, especially for the first 2, the unaware and unprepared. I think we weren't helped by the narrative in the media and the political sphere towards the end of 2020, when you would have conflicting statements that there would be changes to moving goods to Northern Ireland, but at the same time saying there was no border, no change, no friction on goods down the Irish Sea. And then when we got the deal over the line, the trade and cooperation deal, not a free trade deal, which some people think, but a trade and cooperation deal, which isn't quite as waterproof. A lot of people took the foot off the gas and thought, well, there you go, there's a lot of our problems disappeared. So if we go on, then what do some of these problems look like? So if I just... There we go. Right, so customs, we'll split it into SPS and customs. I'm not going to go into this in great detail because I'm conscious, obviously, there's other speakers here. But some of the problems that we initially had, certainly in January, and some of these prolonged right into March, pre-notifications via traces. So a lot of people in lieu, because there was a grace period on export health certificates, they thought that they didn't have to do anything. If you could send food products into Northern Ireland, all you had to do was your customs, because, well, we were told we don't need an EHC. However, the STAM NI declarations, which is a temporary movement, was required. So on actual day 1 of the protocol, I was down in Belfast Port, and there was dozens of lorries being instructed to go to the border control posts because they hadn't done a pre-declaration. That pre-declaration was advising DERA of what type of food produce was coming in, who sent it, and where it's going to. We also had the SPS groupage as a problem. So again, if you're picking up pallets at multiple locations, the guidance obviously said you had to seal the trailer, and the seal number had to go into the shed entry on traces. But obviously you can't do that if you're doing multiple collections, because you're going to constantly break the seal. So there's a problem around that. We have been working on solutions on that, which I'll mention just later on. We then have the prohibited and restricted goods. So we know initially for the first couple of weeks of this year, you didn't need an EHC, but from the 22nd of February, an export health certificate is required. Prohibited and restricted goods is things like sausages, minced meat, and chilled meats, basically. Now, the problem for these is that you can still import them into Northern Ireland, no problem at all. But on the 1st of July, it will technically be illegal to move these products into Northern Ireland, which is also known as the single market. Because at the moment, European law states you cannot import chilled meats from a third country into the European Union. So that can only change if the UK agreed to some form of regulatory alignment and some type of agreement. Some people talk about the Swiss type deal. So that remains to be seen whether we can still import certain produce from GB into Northern Ireland from the 1st of July. Wooden packaging, pallets are being inspected. They must be ISPN heat-treated pallets, and basically it comes down to any wood thicker than 15 millimeters must comply. And then the grace period on everything else, all the other foods, so like fruit and veg coming in and the other meat like beef, etc. coming in, the EHCs for the requirement for those, you don't need at the moment, but that expires on the 31st of March. Now, that was agreed with the EU, but last week it was obviously in the media. The UK made a unilateral decision to extend the grace period into the 1st of October. Now, it was we had to welcome that because ourselves and every other business organisation were saying we need more time to prepare, because 2020 was meant to be the year of transition. It was anything but. And I'm sure Nick would testify later on as well, is that the level of administration and work with complying on EHCs for all the food coming in here, it's a huge task, and we do need more time, and we obviously need mitigations in place as well. So we do welcome that, but we are concerned it's a unilateral decision. So for us, it was almost like a policy win, but it's a bit like, if I put it in terms of a football match, we won the football match in the last minute of injury time, but our player took a dive in the penalty box and it was a dodgy penalty. So we would have rather this happened a better way. And then lastly, the movement assistance scheme. That's a scheme the government at the moment for whatever requires an EHC coming into Northern Ireland. The government is paying the official veterinarian fees up to the cost of £200 plus travel expenses. So companies are able to avail of that at the time being. And then on the customs side of things, we've got, at the moment, entry summary declarations. Generally, it is working okay for most freight. The first few weeks, we did have problems, but the feedback has improved quite a lot. A lot of operators are using the Trader Support Service. It's that free point of use service. And generally, the feedback has steadily improved, and they are processing declarations. There has been, obviously, an impact on groupage operations. That there's been a limit. It's been very difficult for people to maybe amend declarations. Once you submit your simplified declaration to TSS, you cannot then go and edit it. You can cancel it, and then you have to start again, and you can't clone them. So there's a bit of problem with this with the groupage guys, whereby they really can't load their trailers too far in advance. What they would normally do, they'd normally put a trailer into a DC and start loading it maybe even the night before it's due to leave. They can't do that now because obviously you put in the trailer registration number and all the transit details, and a lot of that isn't known until the trailer's ready to leave the DC. And then we have the supplementary declaration. So at the moment, we're doing simplified declarations, and that's just to keep the flow of goods moving across the Irish Sea. But on the 4th day of every following month, when you deliver the goods in, you then, the TSS will contact the importer, and the importer is whoever ERI number has been used to import the goods. They're then looking for the supplementary data, and that's like knowing the commodity details, and generally to find out if any of the goods that shipped in were at risk. and I'll mention there about at risk underneath. And then the last point on transit, getting goods across the Irish Sea that are going via Dublin, for example. That has been a problem certainly in the first few weeks. It's gradually improved a little bit, but the complications with transit has meant a lot of freight that was used in Dublin, for example, and 40% of agri-food between GB and Northern Ireland uses Dublin. A lot of it has temporarily switched to the Northern Irish ports. And then we look at the UK trader scheme, obviously the at-risk policy. What at-risk means, means if you're liable for any of the tariffs, it's to ensure that any produce that comes into Northern Ireland, only duty is payable on goods if it's deemed at risk of going into the Republic of Ireland or the wider EU. So that supplementary declaration is a way of trying to find that out. There is the UK trader scheme that any business moving goods into Northern Ireland should be signed up to, because that's one way of mitigating against having to pay these fees. And then obviously we have the express parcel waiver. So any parcels coming into Northern Ireland at the moment are exempt from having customs declarations. The only parcels that need a customs declaration is business to business parcels where the commodity is valued more than £135. And that declaration can be done retrospectively 3 months after the date of delivery. Now, I have to point out the express parcel waiver that wasn't agreed with the EU, so we already were in breach of the protocol by not applying customs controls. We've lobbied hard, obviously, that we need a solution to this, and I'll touch on one of the other slides here as well. But at the moment, for business-to-business parcels, which is the vast majority, there's no customs declarations at the moment, and that waiver's been extended out to the 1st of October. So the future developments, what do we look forward to this year? The SBS groupage scheme we're currently trialling. Several of our members, operators, have been trialling a scheme whereby instead of sealing the trailer, we seal the pallets. It was quite a simple solution that we came up with, a bit like a bond in each pallet. And there's some operators are trialing this at the moment. It does work reasonably well, but it is very administrative heavy on those operators. A lot of work going into it. But the plan is obviously to incorporate IT into this to streamline it. And you can see the next point, we have the SPS Digital Assistance Scheme. Currently at the moment, the government is running workshops with industry to develop an end-to-end digital solution. So this would mean any of the paperwork, the EHCs, traces entries, everything is consolidated into one system and end-to-end user. So it should hopefully simplify things by the end of the year. Certification hubs, as a lot of you be aware, in Scotland, seafood leaving Scotland bound for the EU goes through a certification hub, I think in Larkhall. In January, the error codes were pretty high, but now it's running pretty seamless. And DEFRA want to extend these right out across the UK as well to aid the rest of agri-food exports. On parcels, there is a plan. HMRC have an IT system, but it won't be ready until Q4 of this year, hence why they've pushed out that waiver to October. And that would mean a super reduced data set for customs on all parcels coming in here as well. So that would, again, less boxes to complete and less data. What have industry asked for this year? What we want to see some movement on is an audited movement scheme for GB to Northern Ireland. So that would be, I think in the past it's been called a retail movement scheme, but we don't want to maybe call it that because we don't want it maybe just singularly being applied to supermarkets. I think there's other businesses that could avail of this. And ultimately it's a business who we'd class as a dead-end host. Goods are coming into Northern Ireland. There's no risk, minimal risk of the goods going to the EU, and it'll be a full track and trace system that has an open book policy both to the UK and the EU on that. And then on business to consumer parcels, we want to see bulking. So at the moment, we've got maybe an aircraft taking parcels into the Belfast airport. One aircraft carries maybe approximately 8,000 parcels. So there's 8,000 declarations. To do singular declarations on that one flight alone, it would take nearly 1 hour just to transmit the declarations to HMRC. So you can see the problem there. What we want to see is a bulking of that. One single declaration to incorporate all the consignments under one movement. It's feasible. It's going to take a bit of work with the EU on that as well. And then we're looking at the import procedures again. So the UK, there is talk maybe about postponing this, but there will be import procedures from the EU into GB from the 1st of July planned. we've got to think about what's going to be the procedures for goods leaving Northern Ireland. We were promised unfettered access. We've got to make sure that's retained, because otherwise HMRC need to have a system in place at Cairnryan, Heysham, Birkenhead, Liverpool, to be able to differentiate what is Northern Irish goods and what is Republic of Ireland goods coming off the ferry, where that ferry left Dublin or Belfast. And then obviously that touches on the Northern Ireland qualifying goods. So if we make cheese in Northern Ireland, but the milk comes from the Republic of Ireland, does that cheese qualify as Northern Irish? Generally, the answer we get now is yes. So obviously we don't want to see barriers because of the integrated supply chains on the island here. There's a lot of produce whereby if you applied the rules of origin strictly, some of those Northern Irish products, technically the rules of origin would fall over, whether it was a UK qualifying good or an EU good. And obviously the requirement for bilateral versus unilateral agreements, we need the EU and the UK to agree all of these things, because otherwise we're just going to be on a constant Groundhog Day of political arguments and a trade war between the EU and the UK. And I think we can all agree in transport logistics, we need certainty and stability on these. And the last point here, where's the Northern Ireland Protocol in the long run? Now, this is based on systems not completely collapsing and no one walking away and leaving us with WTO. So if the EU and the UK stick to their agreement, the withdrawal agreement, this is what we face. So Northern Ireland has to give consent via the Northern Ireland Assembly 4 years after the implementation. So in 4 years' time, there'll be a vote in the Northern Ireland Assembly, and that vote will be to whether retain the Northern Ireland Protocol or remove it. Now, after that initial vote, it may stay a vote every 4 years or it could change to 8 years. That's the discretion of the Secretary of State, and it comes down to whether they go for a simple majority in the Assembly or whether it's a majority of political parties who are aligned as unionist or nationalist. The one thing to remember, a petition of concern in the Northern Ireland Assembly could veto any decision to withdraw from the Northern Ireland Protocol. So the onus, the burden of proof has to be on to withdraw from the protocol, not to stay with it. And then if consent, so let's say the Northern Ireland Assembly did agree that it didn't want the Northern Ireland Protocol anymore, it would only cease to apply 2 years later. So when we're looking at the protocol, if some people think, listen, we could wish away this in 6 months' time, well, it's actually going to be 6 years' time. It's here for the medium term at the minimum. And in that intervening 2 year period where the Assembly would remove it, the UK and the EU would then have to agree a new system, an alternative plan to replace the protocol. So you'd probably get protocol version 2. To replace version 1 on that. So I think we have to be, unless there's a complete diplomatic breakdown in relations, that's what we're looking at, how the protocol moves forward. So that's all from me, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Seamus, thank you so much for that speedy but very comprehensive coverage of effectively where we are now. Hang on, I think yes, we are. That's where we are now, and those are the issues. As I say, some are significantly more difficult than others. And I'm sure that a lot of those of you who are with us this afternoon will have lots of questions which relate to your particular businesses. Please feel free to use the chat line on the right-hand side of your screen for those of you who want to do that, or save up your questions for later on in this particular event, and we can walk through those as we go. And as I say, we can also refer issues to DERA at a later date. So let's move on now, therefore, to Nick McCullough. As I say, Nick is Managing Director of DFDS in Northern Ireland, and his slides are in front of you. The floor is yours, sir. Let's hear from you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today. Firstly, I'd like to thank Kevin and the wider team for inviting me. Greatly appreciated, and hopefully I can give you a flavour of the day in the life of what that looks like as a business, what we do primarily in Northern Ireland, and probably the practicality of what it looks like compared to last year to now, which to be fair is significant. But that's, you know, we are a logistics business. We provide solutions, and that's why we want to move forward with this. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. So a little bit about DAFDS. I mean, so very simply, we move freight and passengers, and Northern Ireland is an integral part to our business, because it is an island and probably our most westerly point in terms of our business. Next slide. So as you can see, we're a European-wide business, head office Copenhagen, Danish business, turnover of 1.6 billion euro per annum. So we're a big player. And I couldn't quite get, in terms of our business, a new one. There is an existing route map on that, but anyone that has been watching the news probably recently saw that to avoid the land bridge and listening to many of our customers, we very short notice put on 3 ships from Rosslare to Dunkirk as part of our Brexit contingency. And that was really to, one, for customers to avoid the land bridge, but particularly around demand of our customers. Initially, it was a reaction and potentially a temporary solution. So we chartered 2 ships and utilized one of our own ships, which was never like to use the word spare in shipping, having a spare ship. But as you could imagine, with the downturn in volumes because of COVID, we were able to avail of that. But since January the 2nd, on the first sailing, it's been 100% capacity on all sailings. And as per recent press coverage, we're introducing a 4th ship. So the demand, as you can see, is that many of our customers are wanting to avoid the land bridge and take a direct Europe into Europe, both directions. Next slide, please. So location. Why are the FDS in Belfast? Well, we're in an ideal location, as you can see. The 3 white buildings, or the large white buildings, are our warehouse operation. And as you can see, we serve many of the top customers. We have to remember Northern Ireland, the island of Ireland, is an island, and we've been here for over 20 years. And if you take back, you know, what has been the impact and where we're at, we came on board into Northern Ireland, particularly after the Troubles, because many of the retailers saw a great opportunity to come into Northern Ireland, to give the people of Northern Ireland that, you know, the service and the retail opportunities that everyone has on the mainland. And for us, that was a logistics, you know, solution that we could offer to give that seamless solution, and most of all, to ensure that someone in Northern Ireland, you know, as could walk into a retail store, I'll not mention the names, and receive the same product at the same price, whether that be London, Liverpool, Manchester. And we've spent years developing that supply chain with our customers to be able to do that. So when the NI protocol came along, for sure that has changed that, and obviously we have concerns about that. But as I said at the start, this is about finding a solution for our customers and adapting to change. That's what we're experts at, and that's what we all within the sector, not just the FDS, strive to do. So when I touch on around the challenges, hopefully it's definitely not doom and gloom. For sure there is opportunities for us, and we need to get past the daily challenges and move forward. Next slide. So I think I'll not go into every detail of this, but when we talk about Seamus, you know, we are a logistics business, and we like simple roadmaps We like things to be made simple, cost effective, and very simple. And as you can see from this roadmap, as much as we've had variations, grace periods, extensions, delays, slight modifications, what you can see, this roadmap is the 9 or 10 layers, processes, and things that we have to consider now when we bring product from GB to NI. And many of you may have seen this previously, but in very simple cases, it is a difficult roadmap that we need to go through. There's reliance, as Seamus has touched on, where our suppliers and our traders have various elements to do. And then there's different steps along the way. Transport and logistics, we want to move as quickly and as least resistant as possible. And under the NI protocol and the changes that have been put in place, that adds in various different levels of administration and risk within the supply chain. We have to remember that to put this into a practical context, we are an island, and to get to this island, we must come prominently by ferry. And ferries don't leave every hour. Ferries take time. So when there is a delay in the supply chain, this isn't as simple as a journey from London to Liverpool, where there could be a small delay. Most of our delays, exponentially as they move on, which I'll discuss, can really add significant time into the supply chain. Of course, we are hoping of the day, one day, when there is a tunnel or a bridge, but I'm hoping that I am possibly retired before that all happens. So we are in today's real world and a real supply chain that, as you can see, ranges from the regulations, the checks, the new IT systems that we've had to adopt and use, and recruit new people. Customs and excise is generally a complicated process, and when we have a short supply chain, lead time, then this adds to the complexity of it. I will let people, for the essence of time, read that at their own leisure, but I think hopefully what it tells is, on the back of Seamus's presentation, is that what was a simple process has now moved on, and this is what we have to adapt and change. Next slide, please. So I suppose the question that many people ask me, I'm on the ground, you can see my location. I have been sitting every day watching the ferries come and watching the challenges and listening and adapting. How I can explain it is that, for sure, it certainly felt as a business that when we walked out of here on the 31st of December and turned the lights off, and when we came back on the 1st of January, it was like starting up a new business, which has its excitement as well, so we shouldn't forget that. But it certainly felt like a new business. And as a business with a P&L, the key representation of your business is looking at the numbers. And I suppose around early February, we were able to do that. And for us, our volumes were down 30%, which is a high number, and that is a comparison to the January the year before. Okay. People will say, well, surely there's some mitigating circumstances. And yes, many of our retail customers, particularly those around with health certificates, started stock building the Q4 of last year. So we certainly seen a benefit to the tune of, to get warehouse space on the island of Ireland in the latter end of last year was probably close to impossible, or there was a significant premium added. And in fact, in October last year, we opened another temporary warehouse in Carrickfergus, probably about 9 miles away from our own operation, due to the high demand. So certainly an opportunity there, but probably does not mitigate the full 30%. We also have to consider COVID and lockdown, for sure. I say comparing apples with oranges year on year. That probably is the case, and probably the government have honed in on that and challenged us around that number. So it is difficult to compare month on month, examples, and the lockdown has certainly seen a downturn, particularly with the restaurants and schools closed. We did see a small downturn there. Profitability, well, we are a business, and that is what my vice president will always ask at the end of every month. So we have to look at that. Our profitability down in the month of January was down 12%. Why is the case? Additional transport costs. So Seamus had touched on it, and I'll move into it around the lack of preparation. We had a lot of delays at most of our suppliers, traders in the first 2 to 3 weeks. And then we saw increased costs from our ferry operators from the 1st of January. Additional overheads, we had to recruit new people because of the processes. And we just had additional costs. So those impacted profitability, and as probably most of us know, within the logistics business, particularly in the retail side, it's high volume, low margin. So that's what we faced in February, and what we have to do as a business to try and work more efficiently, more effectively, and adapt as we head into the year. So Seamus has touched on this already. Lack of preparation and understanding by our customers. Not necessarily their fault. If you consider we didn't really have a transition period, and I'll touch on that, what we have asked for. We talked about it, we've asked about extending the grace periods. We've been challenged, is that us kicking it down the road? I have definitely been promoting an extension to the grace periods, but sit down and find solutions, because we didn't have the transition period. And really the first month of this year was really firefighting. So in the ideal world, we hope to have a smooth transition at the start of January, and then that would allow us to sit down and strategically start working on the end solution. So we really lost a month in January with many of these issues, and now we're really starting to sit down to look at the long-term solution. So in the day in the life, our normal way of working is that a customer books for us to turn up at a distribution center in simplistic terms and collect the trailer. And that is a relatively simple process. But in the new world, we were not allowed to leave until all the export declarations were completed. We had certain information before the driver could leave. At the start, that information wasn't available. So as a business, and many other businesses could not leave nor take the risk of going to port without the right documentation. That led to significant delays. In many cases, to give an example, that was in over a week, where some customers did not able to you could imagine there was a large demand on systems and registration. So for some customers, particularly those with intricate needs, particularly around traces, some of our customers did not move product for the first week, which is significant, as you could imagine, in the supply chain. Late notification from government, so that didn't help either. For example, in terms of the parcels guidance, the relaxation and changes didn't come until the 31st of December. So parcel companies in early December decided just to stop business, which one had an impact on me getting my Christmas presents to my 6-year-old son, as you can imagine. But in terms of companies having to make that decision, that was almost an overnight stoppage, cease of trade, particularly for the parcel companies that we dealt with. So that's a real example where there was a significant impact. Then when the communication was made, then it took us time to build that back up and get us get A, deal with the backlog, and B, get that back to where it should be, in line with guidance. The new systems and new people is never a good mix. You can imagine that in your day-to-day life. You know, we didn't really have the TSS system didn't come live until very close to Christmas. You could imagine, as a business, Christmas is our peak regardless, without bringing in new systems, without having to train new people. So when the new systems came on board, we had 8 days. And again, if you apply this practically, our normal way of business in logistics is we have a significant peak of volume and labor resource up until the 24th. And then kind of in between is what we would call a slight downturn, a downtime where people have been working hard, COVID, everything. What had to happen this time was that we literally went into new people, new systems, and then by the time we were able to do a live example or a live system, we were into the deep, the thick of what was going on. And that really, the 3 points that I've just mentioned, along with other issues, led to significant delays in the supply chain. And I think that was well documented, particularly on the retail end, with the press and the various different videos going around of empty shelves within stores, and that was real. Of course, it was relatively for a short period of time, because we went, like many logistics companies, the extra mile, to put extra resource at it to make sure that we turned that around as quickly as possible. But again, that was with significant cost and significant hard work of our colleagues. Next slide. So this is my final slide, I believe. So the new day in the life. We are still adopting and refining our processes. There is layers of admin that have been added. If you go back to my roadmap and have a look at that, there's just different layers. And if you think about that in terms of simplicity, the more people, the more touch points, and the more stakeholders, I'm sure business people listening in and understand that the more touch points and the more stakeholders you bring into a process, A, more mistakes can happen, B, a lot more communication, which becomes time consuming. And for sure, that has been the biggest challenge for our business at the coalface. I think the other complexity is that we have to remember that there's a different process and a different flow chart, if you want to call it that, for different products and different processes. So the retail process is different compared to someone wanting to bring in milk powder, butter, compared to someone wanting to bring in parcels, compared to someone wanting to bring in airplane parts, whatever that may be. Each process is different, and we only have a finite level of people and experience. So I think that has led to the complexity. It's not just a simple flow chart where we go A, B, C, D, E. Like I say, for each industry, for each sector, the process has been different. The big one for us, particularly within the food supply chain, is that what we have seen is that we've added in an extra day almost into the supply chain, which, when I go back to the start of my presentation, it's almost as if we have taken a step backwards short term, I must add, because when we started this supply chain, there was various different elements and challenges that we had to meet because it was new. By adding an extra day into the supply chain, that has an impact on the end consumer, particularly with fresh food and the life of the product. But also, that drives in more resource, more complexity, more fleet, if I touch on. But I suppose hopefully I haven't presented this too much as doom and gloom, and there's no way out of that. For sure, it's not. There's opportunities. We see great opportunities as we move into, and some of those opportunities we can see, particularly for local producers and suppliers, is that can we as an island put more into our local producers' support and our suppliers. Short term, that presents a challenge because of scale, but that is something that we look at. And for example, there is many other opportunities, but at the moment, certainly our focus is streamlining and getting our processes in place. TSS is not the finished article. It's a very manual process. And for us as a business that is very heavily into IT and investment, we certainly want to see automation and robotics brought into this process, because that will make it easier for a lot of us. I noticed someone in the chat mentioned about TSS. TSS technically has only been put on the table for 2 years. Maybe Seamus might touch on that later, is what happens next, because for sure at the moment there is no other solution. But for us, TSS has obviously given us access to what we need to do. But now with the supplementary declarations and the other articles that we're adding into this process, for sure, automation, robotics, what I would call a one-stop shop. There's various different systems, various different processes that have touched on. If we could get that into a one-stop shop, and we would be keen to work with anybody that could deliver that, then I see that as a potential solution and a way forward. And finally, we must not forget all of this has an impact on the end consumer. All the way through this, I've talked about additional cost, additional storage, additional time, additional fleet, robotics, IT. What that will mean, and no doubt there is data out already for the end consumer, i.e. myself, when I go this evening to buy my shopping from a store in Northern Ireland, our immediate concern is those prices will go up. And why should I be paying more for my shopping than anybody else? Given our position within GB and Northern Ireland. So for sure, it's our job to try and drive that down as much as possible in the supply chain, but we have to be realistic, and that is the immediate concern currently with us as a business. So I hope that ticked a few boxes, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick, for that comprehensive view from both your business perspective, but also from you as a consumer in the Northern Ireland marketplace. I think certainly you've touched on a number of issues which I think people who are both manufacturers and retailers in the Northern Ireland marketplace are having to cope with at additional cost and with additional time within the supply chain too, to feed people who are effectively citizens like the rest of us on the mainland. I think just to add, I think we've got a couple of questions on the chat line. We can pick up those after the final session, which is now down to me. You'll have to forgive some overlap with some of the comments that both Seamus and Nick have covered already. As I've sort of, I suppose, prejudged what might have been the presentation from DAERA, the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs in Northern Ireland, where we were looking for them to particularly focus on the compliance protocol, which is primarily for the sanitary and phytosanitary controls, but also point of entry marketing standards as well, which are equally important as far as the European Union are concerned. And these relate totally to GB and GB to Northern Ireland movements. As Seamus commented in his presentation previously, we're waiting for the sort of the final structure that's going to be put in place for those who wish to move products from Northern Ireland back into the UK. Along with, of course, both the processes and the infrastructure for the rest of the ports of exit and entry around the whole of the United Kingdom. So let's move on to that one. As I say, my sort of process was very much say, well, what are the key objectives? Obviously, it's the protection of the Good Friday Agreement, and as far as the EU are concerned, avoidance of a hard border. Move on, please. Just to remind you, of course, the 2021 timetable from April was that EU to GB export health certificates and IPAF pre-notification would be required, along with various psychosanitary certificates and destination checks on regulated plants. But pre-notification of products of animal origin, which of course are the major area of concern as far as the European Union are concerned. Next slide, please. July, we then have a risk-based level of physical checks, pre-notification as a matter of standard, custom decks before moving goods or on arrival, safety and security declarations before goods arrive, and the need to enter GP through a port through a port with border control posts as well, with the usual paying duty and VAT as applicable. Next one. Yes, again, Seamus covered wooden packages and pallets. This is all to do with ISPM 15 International Convention compliance, again, which is certainly a potential cause for disruption or delay if possible. And of course, issues which are still, I understand, a matter of concern both in Europe and as far as the UK is concerned, insufficient official veterinarian people and EHO resources and people who are qualified to certify PAOA exports. Move on, please. So let's look at the compliance protocol. We've got the grace periods. Again, I think we've covered those particular points. But remembering that already we have to have STANME certificates and health certificates in place by now. Move on. Easements. Obviously, we've got the Trader Support Service, government funded, customs agents for all GB NI goods movements, the Movement Assistance Scheme, the reimbursement of vet costs, and Digital Assistance Scheme, the programme which is currently underway to digitise paperwork requirements and remove the need for paper-based inspections. Thank you. Next one. So the compliance protocol. This particular document, 30 pages long, I commend it to you all to read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest. I'll cover the particular headers as we go through my slides. It's a joint publication by DAERA in Northern Ireland and the Food Standards Agency in the UK. Its objective is to ensure regulatory alignment with the EU, particularly in relation to the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures. All EU food law and marketing standards continue to apply. So we've got to carefully think about definitions and sales descriptions, product standards, product methods, product categories, labeling, and of course issues about origin of both of products and of course the ingredients that go into them if they are manufactured in the UK. SPS goods can only enter through approved points of entry, and Appendix A of this particular document will give you the list of those ports of entry and the particular categories of goods which are allowed for in each of those points of entry as well. In other words, it's not one size fits all. Just take care to have a look at the document. GB is a third country, and therefore Northern Ireland is required to apply SPS checks on entry to the EU zone. Next slide. Just again to remind us all of the particular product headers which are covered by these particular regulations. Animal byproducts, products of animal origin, but also live fish and fish products of animal origin, high-risk foods not of animal origin, plants and plant products, live animals, organics, products and seeds, and also plastic kitchenware for those of you who are interested in that particular part of the supply chain. This particular document, the protocols, covers the roles and responsibilities for each of these particular category areas, and also identifies the SPS checks, the principles, the flexibilities, and the definitions of both retail goods and particularly prohibited and restricted goods, chilled meat products, again, which both Seamus and Nick have mentioned previously, and the compliance procedures that have to be followed, and the timescales which are set down currently, bearing in mind, of course, there appears to be some, shall we say, forces for change in that respect in terms of the timetables over the course of the next 5 to 6 months. Next slide, please. There are 3 obligatory types of checks: documentary, the identity and contents and label checking of products which are in vehicles or in containers or indeed on aircraft, and then the physical checks to ensure compliance with the SPS regulations. The documentary requirements are export health certificates, phytosanitary certificates, common health entry certificates, CHEDs, IUU catch certificates for fresh fish, organic certificates of inspection for those particular range of products, and of course, as we've said before, retail goods require a STANMI to cover all the goods in a vehicle or container. Next slide, please. As and indeed already being applied, chilled meat products will be required to accompany by official P&R export health certificates. This documentation can be completed electronically in GB and uploaded onto Traces NT, either directly or through GB Export Health Certification online, the EHCO system. And once online, the documentation is available to DAERA, where the necessary online checks will be made. Consignments which then arrive in Northern Ireland without the necessary documentation will be considered to be non-compliant, and obviously will stop at that stage. And in the main, though, customs seal checks made by DAERA offices at GB ports of exit will be the main method to ensure compliance. Very much shall we say, a risk assessment and a risk-based process, which I think was on the cards from, well, when I was doing some work with DEFRA. We were talking about it about 18 months ago. New slide, please. So we have the physical checks at ports of entry, full or part load unloading, on a risk-based frequency under those two EU regulations will take place, and the system, the EU Traces NT system, will determine, in collaboration with DAERA CHIPS system, what rate of physical inspection is appropriate, and will identify which consignments are to be inspected on arrival. And after 3 months trial, I'm told, and down to the document, within the document, based on risk assessment, which demonstrates very low risk rates to the animal, plant or public health of EU internal market, DERA intends to subject retail goods to a reduced rate of physical inspection, or in fact defer some identity and physical checks until a later date. So there are some flexibilities really, but certainly point of entry checks for SPS regulated goods must be carried out in accordance with OCR. This is the area that the EU are particularly focusing on, but checks will be carried out to ensure goods move seamlessly as possible through NIE ports of entry, avoiding unnecessary delays. Well, those are certainly aspirations which I think we would all say all want to be applied as soon as is reasonably practicable. Next slide, please. The overall compliance procedures are set out again in the document. They identify the detailed procedures for the 3 product areas which are of particular concern to the EU, and the maintenance of and integrity of the EU internal market. So retail goods, we've covered those. Nick were very helpful, talked about those, as did Seamus. The chilled meat products, and all other commodities. So as I say, these are all laid out in pages 23 to 25 of the document, which, as I say, you can get on gov.uk as soon as you wish. And then imports from Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, will be treated as any other import from the EU, to be introduced at a date to be confirmed by HMRC. Next slide. So there we have it. It's a quick run through of the protocol with the sort of the headlines. I could probably have you here all afternoon, and I'm sure you'd love that, to go through line by line. But I think that gives you sufficient flavour to attract you to have a look at the protocol in more detail and see how it affects your particular business. Thank you for listening. Any questions? I'll put my chairman's hat on again now. Any questions or comments, please use the chat facility and we'll have a look at that, I think. Or you can contact DERA direct at DERA Brexit Communications at dera-ni.gov.uk, and they tell me they would be delighted to answer any particular questions which relate to your businesses. Thank you for that. So really, let's. I've got 8 items on my chat list. Any other comment at this stage from any of you, from Nick or Seamus, would be helpful. Other than that, we'll move into questions. Okay. Let's just see what's on the chat, if we may. Just bear with me. I've got a question here. Interested to hear your views on whether most companies will avail of the extended grace periods which are proposed, or will there be some who will target March the 31st as the implementation date? Nick, Seamus, either of you like to pick that particular one up with your thoughts?
Seamus is sitting back. I think, I mean, from a business perspective, we do need a grace period. I've touched on it before. When we mentioned extending of grace periods, there's 2 camps. Yes, we have to be practical and realistic on this. And then the other side is that all we're doing is kicking the problem down the road. If I was given a defined solution to be able to change at the end of the 31st of March without a repercussion of January the 1st, I would certainly be the first to be on that bus. and leave. But I'm being practical as a person that runs a business, and just feel we're not quite ready. So we will hopefully avail. The grace period was certainly good news, because we just couldn't have another example of January the 1st. Our fear particularly would have been, what would be the consequences of not only from a practical perspective, but also from the political perspective as well, which it would be any excuse for us to remove the protocol, and we're certainly not about that. We're about finding a solution that works for everyone on the island.
Thanks, Nick. How can I give you a supplementary as well? I mean, how are things coming along with the building of new border inspection posts and the infrastructure?
Maybe that one for Seamus in terms of the practicality of it. I would imagine. I know for sure there was recent press coverage around about the work ceasing. So maybe Seamus, if you could add to that.
Mute.
Jim Bingo, I fell. Yeah, we have the 3 temporary facilities which are able to cope now, but they're not ideal. Certainly not for winter weather either for the staff. There is DERA have consulted the Attorney General here regarding the legalities of the DERA minister suspending both recruitment and construction. It's looking like basically the minister will be overruled on that. That's for the courts to decide on that. So we're looking at probably completion date for the permanent BCPs March next year. So in a year's time, by the time we begin work.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I think sorry, what we should add, and is that I can only give praise to the colleagues in DERA at ground level. We have had various issues, answers to that we didn't have the answers to. So when we sent trailers and drivers for inspection, and there were issues, the DERA staff and the people at the coalface certainly supported us in particularly as much as possible in getting the solution found as quickly as possible. So we should be giving praise to those people given the circumstances for all the hard work that they do.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Moving swiftly on, Miles Vartan asks, is the TSS a permanent arrangement? Any thoughts on that? I mean,
the TSS may well be a permanent.
Be for the next 4 to 6 years.
Yeah, the TSS will probably be here for the long term on that, Christopher. It's only funded right now. HMRC pay the money to run it. That's why it's a free of use service, and that contract's for 2 years. So either the government will continue to fund it beyond 2 years on a new contract to Fujitsu, who operate it, or it becomes a private enterprise. So it remains to be seen. I would say it'll stick around afterwards. It just remains the extent of the funding that we get if it's subsidised.
Okay, thank you. Moving swiftly on, Peter Weinstock asks, is there financial support from government to cover additional costs incurred in getting products to Northern Ireland to encourage companies to continue to ship to Northern Ireland? Seamus, I think that's yours.
Yeah, I think, well, the government would say, okay, the trader support service is there, where we're offering customs service free of charge, and then the movement assistance scheme for companies to obviously avail of the fees to cover the veterinary officials. So I think that's probably as much as we can hope for right now. I think if you go into the way of the government, maybe subsidising trade with Northern Ireland, then you fall foul maybe of state aid rules and the level playing field with Northern Ireland.
Okay. Any add-ons, Nick, as far as you're concerned? No?
No, I mean, for us, yeah. I mean, I think as months go by, this will and is being an integral part of the solution. There is development. We had a call last week with TSS, and for sure they're working actively with us for solutions. So for me, it is the solution. It needs to be developed and for sure simplified. And if we can work together as we are doing, and get on with it and keep the politics out of it, then for sure that is probably going to be the best, and will be the best solution for us as operators.
Okay, thank you. Peter also asks, and I think this is probably a DIERA question, which we should send in their general direction, unless either of you guys have got a comment towards it. Has a company been able to ship seed to Northern Ireland since January the 1st, excluding product bag prior to the 1st of January, because DIERA and English plant inspectors don't appear to be joined up at the moment. If you've got a comment, please do. If not, I'll pass that over to Belfast, to my contact in Belfast.
No. Pass it on.
That's it. Move on.
Yeah.
Pam Dennison, who's of course chair of CILT, the Northern Ireland region, just makes a comment saying, "Very helpful insight by all speakers. Thank you. Great webinar." So, bit of praise for you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill Akers, good old Bill, who's on the board of CILT. How is CDS working? Any comments?
It's only been used a slight bit so far. Most trade is using obviously the TSS that has a direct integration. There is concern regarding software providers. There's very limited ability for some software providers to be able to integrate an internal IT system into CDS. Because obviously we have to use CDS for Northern Ireland because it has to comply with the Union Customs Code. We can't use Chief. The big concern really is, Christopher, it's that parcel issue, that the parcel guys can't use TSS because of the volume. They have to use their CDS, their own direct. And there's a worry about the ability for CDS to handle that volume. When I mentioned about one aircraft potentially having 8,000 declarations, a few of all these declarations coming at the one time, I think as one provider, you can do a maximum of 150 transactions a minute. So it's a real strain in the system yet. So we need a bit more time yet to just future-proof it.
Yeah, it was always going to be a tight squeeze. I mean, I sit on the board of Protocol Delivery Group along with Jolien Drury and Sue Morley, representing CILT, and so even way back, it was reckoned to be it was going to be a real push to get CDS in and replace Chief anyway, especially. That was just going to be if it was a normal situation, let alone a situation like this where we got transition and of course COVID as well. But thanks for your thoughts on that one. And finally, we've got a comment which I'll direct towards Nick. Is it likely that significant new freight capacity serving the Republic into Europe, the corridor direct, such as the new DFDS Rosslare Dunkirk route, will survive long term? What impact will it have on the land bridge?
Yeah, good question, and I've touched on that. We can only speak real time now. We started that route on the 2nd of January with maybe not a long-term strategic view, thus we chartered vessels, and there was the risk of potentially demand eventually going down. But so far, we bring in another ship as customers get used to that. The downside is it is a long sailing. Obviously, it's 12 hours, so may not suit fresh food supply chain. So there'll always be the need for the land bridge and the short sea movements. The Irish Sea was always over capacity, in particular for the ships, so they always have been busy. So for us, I think there will be a fine balance. Yes, if the process on the land bridge gets simplified, there is a risk customers will return to the land bridge. But for us at the moment, we certainly are extending capacity on Rosslare to Dunkirk. Stena have done the same, Irish Ferry, so they all see capacity on that route, and for sure it is growing. So I think it's going to be one to watch. If I had a crystal ball, I would certainly answer a few questions, hopefully. But at the moment, it is we're doing what we can and just trying to meet the demand of our customers. Whether that be through simplification of process, or as we've seen, there is, we are an island, so a lot of products have to flow in and out of the island, and we're just creating solutions for the customers.
Okay, thank you very much for that, for that clarification, and yeah, we'll see how it all pans out. Well, that's really, I suppose, that's certainly the end of question time as far as I'm concerned. Unless anybody else has got any others to add at this stage, I've got a blank screen at the bottom of my page here. No, I think we've probably covered everybody. No, nothing else. So really, I'll wrap up and say, Seamus, Nick, really grateful for your insights in terms of the current Northern Ireland situation. We know it's fluid. We know there are so many factors in this which, shall we say, have we've got the sort of the foreseen and the unforeseen, and yeah, there's probably more unforeseens in this than that meets the eye, frankly. But it's hopefully we as logisticians will continue to serve the consumers of Northern Ireland and get them back to the sort of service level that they've been used to as consumers as soon as reasonably practicable. Seamus, again, thank you very much indeed for your input. Always great to work together with yourself and with Logistics UK, and cover the wider range of UK business. And just to remind all of you, this particular webinar will be on YouTube for people who have not been able to catch it at this time. And if there are any other questions that any of you may have, you know where to come. Certainly point them in the general direction of CILT, and we will seek to answer them as soon as practicable. And certainly Jolien Drury, who's on the panel or alongside the panel today, who was past chair of the Public Policy Committee of the CILT, is here. We're certainly working very closely together with government, alongside FTA, RHA, and the other trade associations in the wider Brexit transition situation, to represent our members and to collaborate with industry to get issues sorted as soon as is reasonably practicable. Any comments from you, Jolien, at this stage?
Just a very short one. It's interesting from a Kent perspective. For those who don't know, I live only 20 minutes from the Channel Tunnel, and it's about 6,000 trucks a day in each direction. A very noticeable drop-off in refrigerated trucks, anecdotally, from the Irish Republic at the moment. We get a lot of meat wagons down here, and it bears out the direct services to the mainland from the Republic. And looking at the documentation issues, particularly on composite meat products, if you don't need to fill any documentation up on food products because you're part of the customs union, you really wouldn't need to. And I really do understand that. It was an excellent day. Thank you very much.
No, fine. Thank you.
Chris, it's Kevin. There's one last question that came in that you might want to pick up.
Yes, indeed. Andreas Kaznaus, excuse me, my puncher, and Andreas, forgive my pronunciation here, says Nauskas. I'm a wee bit late in the webinar. Are we looking at any Northern Ireland GB route movement requirement changes for standard goods?
Right. There is requirements at the moment for a limited amount of commodities, things like hazardous chemicals or gases. Technically need a GMR to depart Northern Ireland. There's going to have to be something when GB imposes its own import controls. There's going to have to be a way from HMRC to differentiate when goods arrive from Belfast, whether it's from Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland. If I could borrow that crystal ball belonging to Nick, I would say that there will have to be a simplified GMR for all goods leaving Northern Ireland. Now, hopefully it'll be a very light touch one. There'll be a tick box declaring that the goods are Northern Ireland origin, but there probably will have to be something later this year just to control the movements and record that. Plus, as well, a bit of an argument between the EU and the UK at the moment. And the UK, under the withdrawal agreement, the protocol agreed to share the data on manifests on goods shipping across the Irish Sea. The UK have yet to share any data, probably because really there's not really sufficient data being gathered at the moment. So I think when they put in a formal system for recording that, then they can satisfy the EU requirement.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'd refer you to page 25 of the compliance protocol in terms of GB to Ireland, in terms of all other commodities. So have a read of that, and it's a relatively short table which gives you the compliance procedures which are set down for those particular that particular range of products. Good. Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think that really wraps it up. It's 20 past 3, so we've taken quite a lot of time, and I think hopefully all of those of you who have been listening to us have found that incredibly useful. Again, I'm going to thank Nick and Seamus for being with us again today, and really bid you a good afternoon, and any other problems you may have, do be in touch with us all. Thank you so much. Goodbye.